Okay, so going back to the number 3 character here, a couple things that we want to do. We want to basically take one of those cat objects that we were messing around with yesterday, and we would like to, we're going to try to fit one of these objects inside of that character's geometry as best as possible. Alright, so towards the end of the class period yesterday, I had a couple examples of like these cat characters that were moving some character geometry. So if you remember the example of like the pigeon had a cat rig driving all of the geometry with its animation, or you had that little dinosaur character that was running, and you had one of the cat characters, the cat character animation toolkit tools driving the animation, right? So what we have is we have this character geometry that's rigid and ultimately doesn't move and doesn't have any animation controls, and then we have this skeleton that very easily we can turn on, a walk cycle layer. We can flip it in play mode, and the thing walks, right? So what we want to have happen here is we want there to be this, first of all, this anatomy and physiology kind of component to it, where you fit the cat rig to the character geometry, and then what we have to do is we have to link up the skin of the character, the object, to the bones, so that when the bones move, they pull some of the character geometry along with it, but not all of it, okay? So what I'm talking about is like one of these little foot bones is going to be hooked up to a bunch of points and polygons on the foot, and when the foot bone moves, the character's foot's going to move. Same thing like with the calf, same thing with the upper leg, same thing with the hips. The hips have to be associated with a certain group of points and polygons. The upper body, the torso, has to be associated with like the top of the character. Character's arms have to kind of be associated with that geometry, so when they go to move, they move. The head's actually the easiest. The head, you could pretty much like hook the character's head right on here right now, and like, it would kind of be moving right along with it. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on. Biggest problem with this character though, alright, the physiology of like just this regular base human isn't necessarily the same as this little number 3 alien character. Okay, so those two things have to be set up. Okay, so that's pretty much like the biggest thing. So what I'm going to do is, and I actually got to turn Classroom back on here real quick. Sorry, Hayden. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm okay. All right, sorry guys. I thought I screwed up the live stream. All right, so anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to start off. All right, I want to position my character, and I'm going to get rid of this one base human that I made already. I'm going to take my character, and I want to move my character just so that my character is back at the center of the world. All right, so I kind of want them, if I'm looking at like the big crosshairs here, where we have like the center of the universe in 3D Studio Max, it's like the 0, 0, 0 point. I want to take my entire character here, and I just want to set them up so that they're standing like right in the center of everything. Okay? So just watch me do this one time, and then you guys can come back and you can do stuff with me. Alright? Or you can do stuff kind of on your own. Okay? So all I'm talking about is like just kind of making the character stand on the ground. I'm going to kind of put their feet like right on the ground, right in the center of everything. Alright? Next up, we want to go over to our Create tab. We're going to use the Helpers tool. We're going to look down through here, through that batch of options underneath it for cat objects. In the cat objects, you got a couple different options. You got cat muscle, muscle strand, and cat parent. We're going to cat parent. Underneath that, you got a bunch of different presets. All right, we're going to go for the one that says base human. I do recognize that you have some other characters that kind of look like this. All right, like you have this little alien character that kind of has like, a similar disposition to your number 3 character. He's got a couple extra neck segments. We could probably like cut down on that and stuff like that. He's actually got these little antennae. Those are kind of nice. We could probably mess with that a little bit. But honestly, his arms are a little bit too long. Like he's got some extra bend in his legs and stuff. It just doesn't work out so good. All right, so let's try using the base human. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag out the base human. And if you notice, right when you start dragging that character out, or the base human out, you're adjusting how big they're going to be. Okay? This is basically the cat unit's ratio size. So if you wanted to, you could always come back and you can change this value, and you can resize that character. Alright? Now, what I want to do is, I want to set up the hips right where my character's hips are going to be. And that's going to be the first key to getting this set up to the right size. Okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to not make another one. Alright? I'm going to pick my number 3 character's body, and I want to go into X-ray mode. Does anybody remember the shortcut for X-ray mode? Alt X. There you go. Yep, Alt X. And then all we're going to do is we're going to take the we're going to take the humanoid character's body here, and by moving the platform on the bottom, by moving that little triangular platform, right? Moving the triangular platform, not moving some bone. If you start moving a bone, you're in big trouble. That's bad. We're not trying to do that. All right, we're just moving the platform. What we want to do is we want to center up that humanoid character, that cat character, right inside, right in the middle of the number 3 character. So we want to kind of start to position this where they're going to go. All right, and then what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the pelvis. I'm specifically looking at the pelvis. We talked about this a little bit the other day with the table lamp. All right, the Pixar table lamp, like the Luxo Jr. character. The base of the lamp was the base of the character. When the base moved, every other function of the character moves around. All right. With a human, it's going to be the hips. It's going to be the pelvis. Okay? So the pelvis is kind of like the most important part that we have to position where it's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to specifically pay attention to the size of my cat object in relationship to like where that pelvis bone is going to be. So if I change the size of this, all right, and I set that up, I kind of want the center of the pelvis to be right around where the center of my number 3 character's pelvis is going to be. And that's the big thing. That's like the number 1 thing that you have to do. Okay? Next up, this is like a workflow type thing. You're going to be working with 2 different types of objects in 3D Max. So you're working with these things that are called cat objects, all right, and you're working with character geometry. Right now I have a pelvis bone that is inside, look at it, it's inside of my character geometry. If I change this over to X-ray mode, like I can't even see that bone. How are you supposed to select the pelvis bone to rescale it or change its size or change its shape or anything like that when you can't select it? Okay, that's pretty difficult. So here's the situation. This is what you got to do. In your little drop-down list at the very top of your screen, all right, and I'm going to hit the magnifier just so you see it really quick. Or try to hit the magnifier. There it is. I'm going to go on the magnifier, and I'm all the way up here in like the upper left-hand corner of your screen. So you have undo, redo, select and link tool. There's like a little drop-down. And this little drop-down list, it gives you options. You can pick only geometry, or you can pick only shapes, or only lights. Or look at that at the very bottom of the list. Check it out. Cat bones. All right, so if you turn on the cat bone filter selection tool, when you go back into your project and you start selecting things, check it out. I can't select anything other than a cat bone. This is a really valuable tool at this point because now I've effectively eliminated the ability or the option of selecting anything other than just the cat bones. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to start what we call like biped fitting. I'm going to fit the biped, or I'm going to fit the bones to match up with the character geometry. So I'm going to scale and move and rotate and change the physiology of that biped character so that it fits my number 3 character. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start using my scale tool to move or scale the size of the pelvis so it's a lot bigger. All right, and if I need to move the entire character a little bit because his pelvis needs to sit back a little bit farther, we can do that. All right, if you want to move your pelvis around a little bit, I would be kind of careful. All right, you can actually overextend the legs. If you look at what he's doing here, it's like going up on his tippy toes. You want to avoid that. All right, he's not going to walk naturally if you do that. Control Z or undo is like your best friend when it comes to biped fitting. All right, if you accidentally do something wrong, or you maybe move, like check this out. This is like another bad situation. I put my leg backwards. I start going like backwards with my kneecaps. That's bad news. We want to avoid that. You want to keep your biped, or you want to keep your cat character in their natural pose, their natural stance. Otherwise, like certain things don't work so good. Okay, so we want to move the hips a little bit, but we also want to kind of be conscious about like where they were to start with. So if you need to move them too much, maybe just move the platform. All right. You can scale the pelvis. I like to make the bones, I like to make the pelvis bone like a little bit bigger than my character's body. All right. And what is ultimately going to happen here, what I end up doing is I go back and I right-click on the pelvis bone, or on really any of the bones that I'm going to actually use to control the character. And what I do is I go down to their properties. So I switch their properties, the properties of that bone. So we go down to right-click on it, Object Properties. What I actually do is I set it up so that it's display as a box and that it doesn't render. Okay? So if you set that up so it displays as a box and it doesn't render, what ends up happening, this is kind of cool, I can go back and I can turn off that filter selection so we can pick the character geometry. We'll take that so it's not visible anymore. And look at that, now you have like that cat bone that kind of sticks out around the outside of the character. Maybe you want them to do like a little hip wiggle or something like that. You can always come back later once they're hooked up and you can animate that, because you can easily grab that hip bone and you can now like move it around a little bit. Okay, so if you wanted to do something animatable with the character, maybe you want them to just like crouch down, or you want them to jump up, you can grab that hip bone real easy. You can control your character. You can actually like use it for animation. All right, and it's going to be right there for you to grab because it's kind of sticking around the outside of the character's body. You don't have to do that for every bone. It's probably only going to be bones that you actually want to like grab. So it might be, you know, a bone around the outside of the hand. I want to grab the hand and be able to move the hand around. Right, or the arm, or the forearm, maybe just the torso. It doesn't have to be all your spine segments. It doesn't have to be every single bone. It doesn't have to be every bone in the neck. All right, but for those like larger bones, kind of makes more sense just to make them a little bit bigger than the character. Okay, so when you scale them up that way, that's kind of how that works. All right, and what we'll end up doing is we'll kind of change all of our bones over so that they have those same properties. So if you wanted to, all right, just before you even get going here, maybe just change your bones over. So you just select them, Object Properties, display them as a box, and then we don't want them to render. Okay, they should not be renderable. So when we go to render the whole thing out later on, all right, if I hit F9, I render the thing out, I can see one foot bone that I didn't include, but my hips aren't showing. Okay, so they're not renderable. All right, and that's just like one little thing that I do. I do leave the foot platform kind of on, or I leave the parent platform on, but that's about it. All right. Now all we're going to do is we're going to start to kind of like move through the rest of the character's body and start to set the rest of this stuff up. I'm going to do this like really quick, and then you guys have like tons of time to do this. Okay. So just check it out really quick. The legs are really kind of tricky. The legs. All right, you have to be super careful with how you move the legs around. You can't just arbitrarily start changing the scale of the legs. The legs also have like a foot, and they have this thing called a foot platform. All right, so the foot platform is a little bit quirky too. So you have the foot platform down here. It's just kind of like a box. This basically defines like the steps and where the character is going to walk on the ground. Then you have the foot. Then you have a calf. And then you have a thigh. And if you hold down Control and grab all of them at the same time, they move together. So you can move them. Check it out. Ready? Look. You can move them so you can kind of reposition that back inside the leg of your character. All right? And what we can actually do is you can do that on one side of your character's body. All right? And then I'm going to show you guys how to copy limbs so that you can copy a limb from one side of the body and go over to the other side and paste it but mirror it. So you only have to set up one side of your character's body. Okay? Same thing kind of goes up here, right? Like if I were to scale the torso, Maybe make the torso a little bit bigger. We probably want to be able to see the torso through the entire character's body. So we make the torso a little bit bigger. Scale that up. Scale that up a little bit. All right. Next thing, I got to scale the collarbone. I got to get that arm kind of out where it's going to go. The arms are really tricky. So like check out how the arms are fashioned in the character animation toolkit. Right, like the bones. Right now they're like down here. You can't just twist arms like backwards and face them around just so the box like looks like it fits in the arm. You actually have to move the arm up the way the joints would move, right? So you got to move your arms up and then you got to turn them. Okay, because this character has his like palms like kind of facing out, so they got to go up and then kind of come around.
Should it do that? Would you just rotate it?
Yeah, so we're just going to rotate it. So you got to think about physiologically like how this would actually move. So check it out. Casey was right. You're just going to rotate it up, and then rotate it around. Okay, so just kind of get that character's arm facing the way that it actually would. All right, same thing down here. I would just kind of like rotate that down a little bit because that would move that way. And then in this capacity, like we would pretty much just, let's say we scale it. I want to scale it locally so that I don't goof up the shape of the object too much. And I want to put the elbow where the elbow would actually go. Remember, we put a couple extra folds in the character's elbow, right? So we want to put a couple extra folds. We can put a couple extra folds in there just so it's in the right spot. And then his palm, we're just going to kind of pay attention to how his palm rotates. Get that kind of in the right spot. All right, and once you get a good pose over there, we can copy that from one side, mirror it to the other. All right, and I'll just give you guys like a quick heads up because this wasn't anything too crazy. I'm going to go in more detail about all this stuff like as we go through this. All right, but check it out. Here's my character walking. We'll go back over. We'll set up a new walk layer. We'll press play. This is how he's going to be walking around for right now. Okay, but I got a new character animation transform set up for my number 3 character. All right, so first thing I want you to do, just to get going, all right, we're going to set up a cat parent. It's going to be a base human, and I want you to fit those hips inside of your character geometry. That's going to be step 1. So we'll do just the hips. I'm going to be looking for the hips by like tomorrow. All right, we'll get the hips done, and then we'll switch over and we'll go to the legs. We'll try to get the legs where they're supposed to be. All right, and that's pretty much it for right now. Okay, tomorrow I'm giving you guys like the whole class period to work, and you can get going on this.